What's the difference in speaker crossovers? Well, this question comes to us from Robbie in Colombia, South America. Hey, Paul, I'm Robbie from Colombia. Nice to meet you, sir. And I can't find anywhere an answer or a theory to my question. What would the difference be like in a filter between a two-way woofer tweeter and a woofer tweeter woofer, as in a Diapolito type of setup? I mean, do you just hook up the second woofer in serial or parallel setup, or do I need to change filter components? Best regards, Robbie. My youngest son is named Robbie, who is now running a banh mi shop in Denver. And if you don't know what banh mi's are, they are the best sandwiches ever. It's a French Vietnamese combination. The French contributed the tasty toasted baguette, and the Vietnamese put in their delightfully spicy vegetables and meats. Well, I don't eat the meat, but you know, he has a great tofu banh mi. And so if you're ever in Denver, go to Daikon, because Daikon is down by 6th and Spear. That's my son's shop. And it's buy yourself a banh mi and say hi from Dad. Okay, we're going to talk about speaker crossover. I just wanted to show you something. We were in the middle of a big photo shoot where the last 2 days we're working on revamping the website, which is a long, expensive process. And the photographers came and they wanted to do all these we call them glamour shots, which a little weird. Terry always cringes when I speak about this. Wow, that chassis looks sexy, or you know, it's like, man, you are weird. But this is, I mean, essentially everything that we kind of make. It's all laid out in little groups. Here's like, what is this? This must be our power group, and then here's our amplifier. This would be amplifier groups. This would still, I don't know. Anyway, kind of cool. There's a little sprout sitting over there. Okay. Diapolito. Well, Diapolito, I think his name was Joseph Diapolito. And he came up with the idea of putting sort of a tweeter in the middle, and then as the frequency goes up, rising drivers copied on each end. So you might have a tweeter in the middle, and then a mid-range, and then a woofer, and then going back down, a mid-range and a woofer. It's sort of mirrored from the tweeter being in the middle. That's sort of a Diapolito kind of configuration. And the question is, if you were doing it yourself, would you just, if you wanted to add a second woofer to the crossover, if you wanted to turn it into let's say you had a standard two-way, and you wanted to add another woofer and turn it into a Diapolito, would you just hook it up in series or parallel? And yeah, sort of. I mean, here's the thing. Crossovers are passive devices, so they consist of an inductor, a coil of wire, a capacitor, some resistors, and they're all based on the impedance of the driver. So imagine that you have a 4 ohm woofer, and the crossover is let's say in a woofer, you're going to want to make sure that the woofer doesn't go too high and it crosses over to the tweeter, which of course doesn't want to go too low. So in the tweeter crossover, we just have a simple capacitor, typically, that limits how low the tweeter can go. But in the woofer, we want to limit how high the woofer can go, and that we're going to use an inductor. And that's just, again, it's a coil of wire. And we know that as we put higher frequencies through coils of wire, the impedance increases, like turning the volume control up or down, in this case down, and the woofer won't go so high. But that is calculated on the impedance of that woofer. So if you had a 4 ohm woofer and you had an appropriate coil and maybe a capacitor to make a 2-slope, then if you added another woofer in series or in parallel, you're going to have your impedance wrong, right? So you could then swap that woofer out for, say, an 8 ohm woofer, and then put those two in parallel, making a total of a 4 ohm woofer, and then you'd be back to square one without changing the crossover. But it's really going to be hard to do that, because I don't know that that's exactly what you want to do. When you add those second woofers, you're going to change the way the frequency response of the speaker is. So you may want to change the way the crossover is. But in general, you can't just tack another one on and hook it up in parallel or in series and expect to get the same results. So there's probably some pretty good books on the internet about that. I think you could do well just picking up one of those. Or you can email me if you want any further advice. Okay. Yeah, looks cool, huh? All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.